Hello, guys, and welcome to a new episode of Sound Design Monday. Even though it's Thursday, we're going to be creating 4 videos today. We created the Danik one, we created the Chore one, and now, the Core. And now we're going to be creating the Showtek We Like to Party lead. Showtek's leads really aren't that special. I mean, back then they were, but now it's recycled crap. But who am I to say stuff like that? But I mean, that's just my opinion as a sound design. It's just a joke to me. But most of their sounds are recycled. And the thing that makes Showtek stand out and something that I admire them for and I give them credit is that they know how to create melodies that can get a dance floor moving. They can create those melodies that just make the track go from okay, like shit to like fucking amazing. So this is one of those tracks that they created and that works really well on the dance floor. So we're gonna be creating the leads. This is how they're gonna sound like. It's gonna be 2 layered leads and just an input. I do have reverb on the master and I do have an EQ as well. Okay, so that's gonna be the We Like to Party lead. It's gonna be layered by 2 sounds. And then we got the more greedy sound on the top. So these sound like trumpets. So for the guy that was asking me how to make the Showtek trumpets, this is going to be the sound for you. And all you have to do is layer it for the track you were requesting earlier. Anyway, so this is the We Like to Party, and let's get started. Okay, so straight away, we got to put the polyphony up to 6. And again, I've explained why we need to put the polyphony up. But if you miss that, then it just increases our voices. And the more voices you have, the more notes you can play at the same time. Okay, so this is going to be another supersaw. And really, it's getting out of control. And Big Room House, that's all they use. But I'm going to be showing you guys a technique that pretty much you're going to want to use for creating your big room leads, and this is the thing that makes those leads stand out. So first, let's get into it, and I'll explain what I'm talking about later. Okay, so oscillator 1, we're going to be having a saw wave with 8 voices, detunement at 4.81, no phase, everything's going to be set to default, but we're going to turn the retrig off, which just restarts the phase. The phase section of the oscillator, and what that does is it's going to let the sound kind of wander more freely. But if you were to turn the retrig on, it would make it sound more in your face. Next, we go into the amp envelope A, where our decay is all the way up, our sustain all the way up, our release at 0.79, and our attack at 0.11. Just a little quick tip is the reason that we don't have a lot of release on this sound is because we're going to, like, the whole idea of this sound is to play it over a big kick drum, and we're going to have a lot of reverb on it already with a lot of decay. So it's already going to have a tail. It's not going to have a tail of a saw, but it's going to have a tail from the reverb. So really, there's no need to put the release up on this section. So next, we're going to go into oscillator A2, where we're going to be putting the octave up by 2, 8 voices, and this one's going to be lower volume. And I've always explained that higher frequencies can be heard at lower volumes more than lower ones. So usually your low frequencies are going to be higher volumes than your higher ones. And the reason for that is just we're really making a supersaw, so we're trying to compensate, because if I were to keep the volume up on this, it would sound really loud and it would hurt your ears. So we don't want that. So we're going to put the volume at 2.76 with the octave plus 2, saw, 8 voices. It's a supersaw, so always 8 voices, and detunement. Detunement 5.29, and the key to the sound of Showtek really is in the detunement and in the programming of your envelopes, and that's what I'm going to get into later. Okay, so once we have that here, we're going to go into filter A, which is just a normal low pass 12 dB. If you don't know what a low pass is, then take out a book and take the note that a low pass will pretty much cover, it's like putting a hand over your mouth, and pretty much you'll cover the higher frequencies and you'll just hear the lower ones coming out, just like right now. So that's what a low pass does. It gets the higher frequencies and it pretty much removes them first until you get to the end. And if you completely close the filter of a low pass, then pretty much you're not going to the last thing you're going to hear is the bass. So here I have a 4 and I'm going to do a low pass. As you can see, low pass highs are being removed first, and then the last thing you'll hear is the low. Okay, so that's what that is. So for that, the cutoff is going to be set to 2. Resonance is set to 3.14, and the drive set to 3 o'clock with a 12 dB. Next, we're going to go into filter control. We're going to turn it all the way up. Resonance is going to be set to 10. Key track is going to be set to 8, and we're going to have a warm drive on that. So I explained what key track was, but if you didn't see the video, key track pretty much opens up your cutoff more. So generally you use it a lot when you have the cutoff low and you put the key track up, and it's still going to let it's still going to let sounds come out, as opposed to having it down. Part B doesn't have a filter, that's why it's not doing it. I'll show you guys later in a future episode. But actually I'll just do it now. Cut off all the way down. Barely hear it. Put the key track up. It'll open it up. So that's what the key track's doing. So we're going to put that at 8 o'clock. Filter all the way up. Let's remove this filter from here. We don't need it in part B. Okay, we got it there. Okay, so now we're pretty much done with the filter section and part A. So now we're going to move to part B. In part B, we're going to be applying white noise with 8 voices as well. As I explained, higher frequencies can be heard at higher volumes. Wave of the noise. White noise can be heard really easy. Like if you have it low, you can hear it easily. So we really need to lower the volume on that. So it's 0.95. Next, we're going to be putting amp envelope B, which is going to be the same as part A, except since we have white noise, we kind of want to make that kind of come out more and stay longer. So we're going to have a release of 2.34. White noise is also going to be detuned by 5.19. Okay, and retrigger off for that. So next, we're going to go into oscillator B2, where we have another saw with 8 voices. Retrigger on. Volume is set to 2. Detunement is 0.48, so it's not that detuned. Phase at 0. Stereo at 10, and no panning at all. So once we have this, now we get into the secret of creating these leads. So first thing we're going to do is go into envelope 2, and what we're going to do is move the black knob back by negative 0.29. You can move it forward. It doesn't really matter. And next thing we're going to do is we're going to route this to pitch AB, and this is the key to all those big room leads you hear, is that all the pitches of the normal saw waves or the super saws have some sort of envelope or some sort of modulation, like an LFO on it. And pretty much what happens is an envelope and an LFO are different in the sense that an envelope only activates once, and if you hold down the key, it's not going to activate again. But an LFO, it's sort of like a non-stop motion. So if you see here, you see a sine wave going up, down, down. It's going to keep going and going and going and going as long as you keep the whole noted down, the note down. So that's the difference between LFO and envelope 2. So really here, since these sounds are going to be played really like not sustained, they're going to be more like triplets and so forth, then it's just more wiser to go with the envelope 2. And envelope 2 also, the envelopes give you a lot more freedom in the sense that you can change how fast it goes through certain phases, while the LFO just lets you choose how fast it's going through whichever wave you're using. Okay, so hopefully you understood that. Now pitch, the black knob is negative 0.29. Our attack, and this is very, very important, 1.03. Decay is 0.52. Sustain at 0, and release at 0. So just really, really subtle movements in the pitch here can change the sound drastically. So you want to make sure they're pretty much exact. And this is the key to the sound. This is the bread and butter. This is the reason why it sounds the way it does, next to the phase and the chorus. But this is one of the things that you need. Without it, you'll lose pretty much the life of it. Okay, so we'll go into the phasing section now, where we're going to be having the dry and wet set to 68.10%. Center frequency set to 5, spread all the way up, LFO, LR offset, just 12, so really by default it should be there. Phaser width 100, default, LFO rate 8/1D, LFO gain 0, feedback 9.05. Next we're going to go into the chorus, where we're going to be putting the dry and wet at 22, delay at 8.80, the rate of the chorus. So this is like sort of like an LFO type thing. 27.50, the depth of it 40. Feedback none, and all the way up. We're going to go into the EQ, where we're going to be having a 1-pole EQ, bass all the way down to 6.36 dB at the frequency of 103.65 hertz, and our treble up by 8.50 at the frequency of 1532.17 hertz. Next, we go into a reverb, a really, really important part when it comes to creating these leads. We're going to have the dry and wet at 50, the pre-delay, so before the reverb happens, 145.71. The dampness is going to be set to 8.14, and what dampness does is that it makes the reverb sound more in the lower frequencies, in the mids than in the highs. So the higher this goes, the reverb is going to sound a lot more muddier. So if you're going for that, you put the dampness up. The higher the size, the bigger the room it's in. And in sense, if you understand what reverb does, it's like emulating you putting the sound in an empty room, and the size is going to decide how big that room is. The width is going to decide where the reverb is going to be placed. As always, reverb is going to be generally heard on the sides. So generally you want the width all the way up. Next, we're going to be applying some compression. So pretty much what this is saying is the ratio is by every sound that goes in 1.12, one sound or one value will come out. So pretty much that's what the ratio is saying. So 1.10 to 1, the threshold, negative 4.71. And if you want to see this visually, here we have a compressor. This is going to be the threshold. So the more down we put it, the more we compress it. The attack, 43.66. Here's our attack. It's going to decide how fast the compressor is going to work. So usually the attack, you want to move it to a point where you want to conserve. Let's say you want to conserve a transient like the kick. You want the kick to activate the compressor. You're going to do it through the attack. The release is going to decide how fast the compressor lets the sound go out. Let's say you're doing a side chain and you see if you want the release to kind of give that effect like in trance, you're going to hear the reverb go like every time something activates it. The release is going to decide how fast the sound is going to return back to normal. So generally you're going to see like lines here. So if you have a high release, generally there's a few things that could happen. And if you have a super high release and you're pretty much rounding this to something that's hitting on the floor like a kick drum, then all it's going to do is decrease your volume and you're not going to get no pumping effect. So you got to be really careful with that. So our attack is set to 9 o'clock and our release is set to 10 at 148.32 milliseconds. Okay, so once we have that, we're going to put mix A up to 6.44, mix B up to 6.32. And we should be getting this sound, which is our first layered sound. Okay, it's not going to sound exactly like I said. I have EQ on the master and a reverb as well. So it's extra added reverb. So don't forget to do that as well when you use the sound. Okay, now we're going to go into the bread and butter of the sound. And we're going to be creating this one now. Okay, so this one's going to be a little bit more. Sorry, wrong one. This one's going to be a little bit more difficult to create because this one is actually going to have 2 LFOs and an envelope too. And again, we have the pitch modulations that I've been talking about. So they're very minimalistic, but they do the job, and it's what creates these sounds. It makes them sound the way they do. Okay, so polyphony again up to 6 for this one. Here we have a saw with 8 voices. Volume is going to be set to 5.67 with the detunement at 4.95. Retrig off. Our attack is 0.05. Decay and sustain all the way up, and release is at 1.02. The next thing we're going to do is go into oscillator 2, where the retrig is going to remain on. 8 voices, no detunement, volume all the way up, stereo all the way up, no panning. And now this is where we're going to be creating this sound. It's another thing is the filter we're going to be using is going to be a bandpass filter. And generally what a bandpass filter is, and I like to call it, it's like a low pass and a high pass put together. So if we go to the right, you're going to get more of the higher frequencies. As you can see the bandpass here. Just think of the cutoff being here. So generally speaking, you're going to be getting rid of some of the lows while you remain some of the highs. And the reason for using a bandpass is because let's say you like a certain frequency from this part, but you don't want the low or the high or so forth, or you just want it to sound a certain way. The high pass will give you that freedom to do it. So generally that's what the bandpasses are used for. So here we have the cutoff set to 4:35 or 1 o'clock, our resonance to 3.14 or 10 o'clock, and our drive to 10 o'clock, 2.29. This is going to be a 12 dB type filter. Our filter control is going to be set to 10 o'clock or 11, 32 hertz. Resonance at 10 o'clock at 3.43, and our key track at 0.81 with the warm drive on. Okay, now we're going to go into part B, where again we have white noise, but we're not going to be using it. This is just for your purpose. If you want to put this on, it's up to you. Just add it. But white noise, 8 voices, pretty much nothing, volume all the way down. If you choose to add it, then you just add it. But since I turned it down because we're layering leads and this one already has white noise, so there's really no purpose to have this here. Next, we're going to go into the attack. Amp envelope B, attack at 0.05, decay at 5.23, sustain at 6.72, and our release at 0.10. Oscillator B2, we're going to lower by an octave, leave the retrig on. Saw wave with 8 voices, no detunement, because this is going to be a lower frequency. Detuning really doesn't work well with lower frequencies. Our phase set to 0, our volume straight at 12 o'clock, and no panning. And no filter for this as well. And the reason it looks very similar to the first one is because it sort of is. The only difference between them is that there's some change in the detunements. And we have a phase and a pitch now being modulated through LFOs. Okay, so we're done with this. Now we're going to do the important stuff. Now we're going to go into mod envelope 2, route it to pitch AB. So it's going to route it to part A and part B. We're going to move the black knob to negative 0.76. Our attack is 0.57. Decay 1.26. No sustain and no release. And this is going to be affecting our pitch. Now we're going to go into LFO 1, where we're going to be putting a phase AB. We're going to be using a sine wave at a rate of 164, and we're going to move this more by 1, and we're going to offset it by negative 3.43. So generally the way LFOs work is use a sine wave. So pretty much just look at the sine, and that's the way it's going to work. So pretty much what's going to happen, it's going to go from normal value to high, back to lowest, and then back up to the normal, and repeat the process. If I were to put a square wave on this, which is another very popular choice when using LFOs, and generally you use a square on the pitch, or you're going to be using other like a triangle. Generally what this is going to happen, it's going to be really sudden. So you're going to have high and then down all the way to low, and then back up to high, and so forth. And it happens really fast, but we're going to be using a sine for the phase. Next, we're going to go into LFO 2, where we're going to be routing it just to pitch A. And we're going to move it by 0.10, so very minimal. The LFO rate is set to 116D, no gain and no offset. So it's going to be really, really subtle and really minimalistic. And finally, let's get into the mono legato here. We're going to turn this on, mono legato. So pretty much we're going to be allowed to play one note. Portamento set to 2, and this is going to be at normal value. If you put it in slide, it's going to be really drastic, so you don't want to do that. Finally, we're just going to add effects. We're going to go into the phasing section, dry and wet to 5.71, and you're going to leave it by default, I believe, but just in case, width all the way up, offset 0, 12, center frequency 12, LFO rate 0, LFO gain 0, and feedback 5.71. Chorus set to 17.14% with the chorus delay at 8.80, the rate all the way up. Depth at 40, dual mode on, feedback 0, and all the way up for width. And finally, our EQ. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to be putting the bass 6.36 dB at a frequency of 103.65 with the EQ treble at 2 o'clock at 10.07 dB. And our frequency EQ treble, where we're going to be increasing it, is going to be at this frequency, 4124.29 hertz. Finally, we're going to be done with the sound, and pretty much what happened here, it's pretty much a replica of the first one, except I changed a couple of things. So we're going to lower mix B all the way down. You can add it if you choose to, but like I said, we're layering sounds. But if you just like this sound by itself and you want to add this, go for it. Mix A is just at 6.38. And once we have everything, we should be getting this sound. Pretty cool. And this is what, in a key of E. So let's see if I have a kick drum. I have this stupid pack, and let's just add it for fun, which is a fucking joke, honestly. Whoops, reverb's on. Let's turn that off. I don't even know if this is gonna work. Let's just add it for fun, and let's just fix this MIDI up. I doubt it's gonna work. It's not gonna work. No. Anyways, guys, that was the show, the Showtek tutorial with a fail at the end. These pieces are gonna be up for download later on tonight. So if you couldn't get this sound, or you're just too lazy, at least go through the videos and know what the fuck is happening in the sound, so you at least have some sense and can appreciate them. Make sure to subscribe, like my Facebook page, and I'll see you guys in a couple of hours again for a new episode. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. This one was pretty easy, and hopefully you guys can create some amazing music with it.